following are the words of Lou Civello, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back. Moving right along. As promised, we have with us, as we do every other Tuesday, Lou Civello, the president of Suffolk County PBA. Very, very active organization, very, very active PBA president. Come across a lot of different things that are happening out there. And again, the bottom line, folks, it's always about the safety about all of us, the safety of our police officers, allowing our police officers to do the job. And as I said right after Lou, as always, we have our District Attorney, Ray Tierney, who's very upset about some of the laws that are being examined right now in Suffolk County, in the state of New York, that are going to impact us here in Suffolk County. It's about releasing criminals and so on. A lot going on. Let's welcome Lou Civello. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you, Tom. Great to be with you.
You know, I did want to talk a bit about the HALO Act. I want the folks to know that you were on Greg Kelly's Newsmax, a well-known show. In fact, if I'm wrong, you'll correct me. I think Greg Kelly is actually the son of the former police commissioner Kelly. And so great to have him doing a show. At least he knows the issues facing law enforcement and so on. And we're going to talk about the HALO Act. A couple of observations that I had, because I did see the segment with you there. Great job. Great job for a national program. You did a great job for a national program to get the message out there. And to show the confrontation in the beginning of that show, it just made me sick between, I guess I'm allowed to say it, a low-life thug, whoever it was, going face-to-face with a law enforcement officer and saying anything he wanted. And he kept referencing the First Amendment, the First Amendment. I can do this, I can do this. And say just wretched things, wretched, that no human being should have to be subject to that at all. And that does not further public safety at all. It does not further what the American people want. Yet there's a feeling out there that thug lowlife and his mind have a right to say that. And there are some jurisdictions, as you well know, that will support that person's right to say that. What's our way out of this, Lou?
Well put, Tom, and that lowlife is certainly apropos for that individual who was right in the cop's face and threatening the cop. And he not only spoke about the First Amendment, Tom, but he also, what really shocked me was actually quoted the law, 50A. He's actually telling the cop, I can find your address. And he can do that for one reason only, because Albany told him when they removed that 50A law. And he's telling him, I know that Albany allowed me. I can find you, officer. I can find your family, your wife, your children. It's a threat, Tom, an outright threat, right in the police officer's face, not only saying I'm going to hurt you, but I'm going to threaten your family on video. And I'm so brazen about it, I'm going to do it while I'm being recorded and recording myself and putting this out there for likes and clicks. It's disgusting. And, Greg Kelly, great show, nationally syndicated. But I have to imagine people outside New York are watching that, scratching their heads and aghast at what's going on here in New York State.
Folks, I urge you to go find it on YouTube. Just put in Greg Kelly. You'll find it. Lou Civello, guest. I'm asking everybody to look at that just to see it. Lou, you have been a great spokesperson for police officers. We have a clip. I guess it was a rally you were at or so on. Let's play. This is the voice of Lou Civello you're about to hear at a rally. Clip one.
Who wants to sign up to be a punching bag? Who wants to sign up to have your family threatened? We sign up to risk our own lives, not our families. Criminals are emboldened. And when you strip the authority away, when you make that badge that we wear mean nothing, that's when the violence comes. That's when you get smashed in the face with snow. And it's a joke, treated like a joke. Complete and utter disgrace. This needs to change. This alliance, everyone you see here is going to fight until we get this law passed.
And that's, I can't imagine the passion that you possess. In fact, I can't imagine it, but it was so well articulated. that you almost feel there'll be that success. They'll pass that law because you are 100% correct, as everybody knows. Who wants to join up in one of the greatest professions that we have in this country, and that is law enforcement on any level? And again, by saying that, the following has to be there. Do you get the impression? I know I feel frustrated when I think about this and I think about what's happening in New York. I know I'm going to feel the same frustration when DA Ray Taney comes on right after you, because he's talking about legislation up there that I know is almost like the second cousin to what you're saying here. What about that level of success? What about that passion and the way in which you spoke? Does it permeate to the people that make these stupid decisions, Lou Civello?
Well, I think it does, Tom, because we had the bill's sponsors standing right next to us. You had law enforcement unions from across the state. That was on the steps of City Hall. We had the coalition led by Scott Monroe, President Scott Monroe of the New York City Detectives Endowment Association. And we had, Jessica Spanton, Senator Spanton from Staten Island. We had our own Assemblyman Kwani O'Farrow, who's carrying that bill from out here in Suffolk County. So representatives from New York City, representatives from the Assembly, representatives from the Senate. So I think the message is getting through. And I can tell you, Tom, just to paint the picture a bit for your audience, we're at City Hall. We're on the steps. Obviously, security very tight at City Hall. These auditors, frauditors, as we like to call them, because the whole thing is a sham, they showed up. They showed up and did everything they could to get inside and disrupt that. For champions of free speech, they were there to prevent us from exercising our First Amendment rights. And Tom, unbelievable. They were dressed as if they were news reporters. They had professional-looking cameras. They had microphones, fake logos on the microphones, right in the NYPD's face, trying to get their way inside. NYPD did an excellent job at not letting them in, not letting them disrupt the rally, not letting them cause chaos. However, they were not deterred. They stood at the fence line with megaphones and just attempted to shout us down the most vile things, shouting out KKK, shouting out just nonsense, vile nonsense. So for people who, supposedly hold the First Amendment in such high regard, they have absolutely no regard when it's not them speaking. They don't want to engage in fair debate. They want to shout you down. They want to shout vile, terrible things. And that's what you deal with. But we were able to point to them and say, hey, you're making our point for us. Because if we were to allow you in here right now, you couldn't have that rally. They would be right in your face with megaphones. They would be threatening. They would be stoking chaos. Needs to stop. We need a rational law here in New York State to allow our police to do their jobs.
Some of the names you mentioned, it almost sounds, and hopefully I'm not on a limb, but it sounds like there's a possibility of some bipartisan support for this. If you have Democrats and Republicans getting together on this, it's something that I could see possibly happening. Now, again, this new organization of a coalition of law enforcement agencies that I know you're a part of, it seems like that could create the stir to make it happen. I know sometimes I think too optimistically, but is there a chance that bipartisan agreement could happen so we could pass a HALO law?
I think so. I think we're going to make a lot of headway on this, and we're going to be politically involved going into this election cycle. So one of the bill's sponsors, who is a Democrat, Senator Spanton out in Staten Island, she's being primaried right now, Tom, by a radical leftist. So that's why it's so important, no matter where we live, whether it's out here in Suffolk, New York City, or upstate, that we are involved in the political process. Because if you allow the fringe to take control, you're going to have absolute chaos here in New York State. And those bills that our great DA is going to speak about next is a prime example of that. You have these insane bills right now that are just waiting to be pushed through by some of the fringe element in the Senate and the Assembly that would create loopholes. Each one of these bills he's going to talk about has the same thing in common. They each create a loophole to allow the most violent of predators, criminals, free. I'm talking about serial killers. I'm talking about cop killers. I'm talking about gang members. I'm talking about people that should never see the light of day again. If any one of these bills pass, they're going to be out here and they're going to be causing more havoc. You're going to have more victims, more people dead, more families turned into losing loved ones, again, because of the insanity in Albany and allowing the fringe to take control. We can't allow it. Democrat, Republican, we need to speak to the rational people, the moderate people in both parties, and we need to make some headway and say, hey, we understand we might not agree on everything, but I think we can agree that somebody who rapes a child, somebody who murders a police officer, should not be allowed to go free, especially when they do a fraction of the time that they were sentenced to.
And many of them, of course, as you're so articulating, is very violent individuals. You know what I think about when a violent person is taken into custody, somebody who's just has no regard for human safety, human life, or whatever, is the officers, the initial officers that had to make the collar, that had to take the bad person down. These are not the nicest people in the world, and I say that facetiously, to arrest. Many of them protest with violence. Many of them are fighting. Some of them try to use deadly physical force against these cops. But once they're taken into custody, okay, they're going to go away for 30, 40 years. But apparently in this state, they're not going to go away in 30, 40 years. That all of that work, that the great men and women who wear the uniform, who are the first protectors, the patrol division, they're the ones that risk their lives taking them in. They may have to risk their lives again. I look at it from that point of view, too. When you think about the work that is being undone by letting these individuals on. This is what we're going to talk to the DA about. But there's that relationship that exists between the prosecution and the cops, which are on the front line of this whole thing. Lou?
Right, yeah, and thankfully the DA is sounding the alarm on this because he knows the disastrous effects that these laws would have should they pass. But to your point, Tom, it's my members that risk their lives to lock up these lowlifes in the first place. And it's crazy to think that they may have to risk their lives again for the same individuals. You're talking again about cop killers, rapists, gang members. These are the people that would potentially be let go. And we know they'll do it, Tom. We know these sick parole boards will allow these people to walk free because they've done it. They've allowed 44 cop killers, cold-blooded assassins. They've allowed 44 of them to go free here in New York State. So imagine how much worse that gets when we pass these laws that allow them to do it earlier, allows them to do it after just 15 years in some cases, allows violent criminals to build up credits for going to school, that they can cut their time in half and walk out. You know who's not cutting their time in half? The people that are going to live without their loved ones, the victims. Disgraceful, disgusting. The people of New York State need to wake up, and we need to get to that voting booth.
Just a quick description, and I'm skipping around here because I got so many issues to speak with you about. The HALO law, exactly what does it do? How does it keep these individuals away from first responders, and includes not just police, but I believe it includes the ambulance personnel, rescue personnel, and so on from doing their job? How do you keep these YouTube people away?
Right. Well, first I'll speak to what it doesn't do. And what it doesn't do, despite the rhetoric that you hear, is infringe upon the First Amendment in any way. Tom, there is no First Amendment right to threaten a police officer. There is no First Amendment right to stoke violence. Okay? You cannot harass, you cannot abuse, you cannot obstruct. And right now, New York's law is so weak that they exploit these weak laws, these loopholes, to do exactly those things. Now, this law very simply would allow you to exercise your First Amendment right. It would allow you to speak, to criticize, to film. You could film all day long. Very simply, once you start threatening the cop's family, once you start abusing, once you're in the cop's face with a whistle, once you're getting in the way of the cop administering medical aid or locking someone up, when you start doing any of those things, you're going to be warned. And you have to be warned the way the statute is written. Back up. You want to film from 15 feet, a very, very reasonable buffer zone, a few feet away. Back up a few feet. If you do not do that, you will be arrested. Again, common sense, rational law. And the people that really want to film, the people that really want to exercise their First Amendment rights, well, they should applaud this law because it separates them from those that are just looking to cause chaos, to get their likes, get their clicks, get their money from the YouTube mob. This separates them from the people that actually just want to film, just want accountability, the people that are actually being truthful, right? because it does not infringe upon your First Amendment right to film us whatsoever. What it does do is protect the police officer, protect the public. Volatile situations gives us a reasonable few feet to get our job done.
If my memory doesn't escape me, I believe the law in Florida that was passed, very similar to that, has been upheld by the courts as not a violation of the First Amendment. Because the argument of everything that you just said was advanced in a Florida courtroom. And as of right now, that's the way I see it. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that, but I did come across a ruling on that where very similar laws are being passed, not just in Florida, but in Texas and some other states, to protect officers from these individuals, whatever you want to call them, from, I guess, trying to get clicks and so on. We live in an age of social media. I wanted to bring this up with you, Lou. Saturday, I was like many Americans. I was looking forward to watching the Correspondents' Dinner and watching the president, just to laugh, because I felt it was going to be hysterical. It was the first time that Donald Trump as president was going before the Correspondents' Dinner. It all went awry. An individual who published a manifesto was able to have a shotgun. I think he had a assault-style shotgun. I think he had a handgun, a .38 caliber semi-automatic pistol, a couple of knives, and so on. Was able to, crash through the magnetometers and so on. The people in that crowd that were there were the movers and shakers, were the influencers. That's what I found very fascinating about it. They represented ABC, NBC, CBS News, MSNBC, Fox News, all the affiliates, Newsmax, a program that you were on. They were there, 2,100 of them. Okay. They had a different perspective for the first time in their lives to live through an incident as opposed to reporting an incident. And not one of them at the time were talking about systematic racism. They weren't talking about that. They weren't talking about that the police have too much power. They weren't talking about that. All I heard them, particularly from some of these executives, was that they felt protected. They felt the police, that when they saw the presence of the police, they felt the safety element. Even Wolf Blitzer happened to be going upstairs when the shootout began, and a police officer just knocked him on the ground and shielded his body. And even Wolf Blitzer, who is a seasoned commentator, was stuttering a little bit because he was scared, but he also said a police officer saved my life. And I wanted to bring that up with you because does it take that for those people that detract? And you had a national press corps in there. You had the people that make the opinions of the anti-cop people out there. All of a sudden, Lou Civello, changing their mind. And I felt that was one of the benefits of what took place. We don't want that to happen. But I think they saw it for reality of how officers were doing whatever they had to do to protect people and to save people. And nobody knew what was going to happen. Just because they took one guy down, they didn't know if that was an Iranian hit squad. Many of the people there were saying we expected a shootout. We expected this. They were afraid. But the common denominator was they thought the cops, and there was Metro Police there, local police like what you represent. There was FBI there. There was ATF there, United States Secret Service, and so on. How did that make you feel when the so-called left-wingers were so grateful for the police?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't take the thin blue line standing between you and a loaded shotgun for you to appreciate the police. So, obviously, I'm glad that they're finally seeing it from our perspective. Far too many of these people, they form their opinion of the police from what they read from the radical leftists, even from our higher education, right, where the police are maligned and villainous. Yep. But in reality, when your life is on the line, those police officers are the only ones that are going to risk their lives to save yours. And again, unfortunate that it takes that, but I am glad that in this case they were able to give credit where credit was due. I mean, great job by our outstanding law enforcement. This is the third assassination attempt on our president's life. I mean, what are we doing? We have to stop thinking of ourselves as liberals, as conservatives, as Democrats, as Republicans, and start thinking of ourselves as Americans. Americans shouldn't hate each other, right? We're one country. We have enough people in the rest of the world that hate us. Enough is enough. This is the third time they've tried to kill an American president. We need to tone it down, the rhetoric, the name-calling, the Nazis, the things that are absolutely so outlandish and so dangerous. We need to have actual productive conversations and tone down the rhetoric.
Well said, and I also think that some of those movers and shakers, those great influencers, and these are national people, they're having their, I was going to say second thoughts, they're having real thoughts right now on the next time they want to malign our law enforcement, or they want to throw ICE agents in jail and punish them. I think maybe there'll be a second thought to all that. Once again, Lou Civello. Lou, thank you very much. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Tom. Take care now.
We're going to take a short break. When we get back, let's talk to our DA. Then we're going to take some phone calls. We'll be right back.